I'm standing by the panoramic window. The city lights a blurred tapestry below, trying to disappear into the opulent decor of the isolated mansion. The air hums with hushed conversations, the clinking of expensive glasses, and the subtle, venomous whispers that seem to follow me like a shadow. No one wants her. I heard it again. A cruel, soft hiss from a group of women draped in silk and diamonds, their eyes flicking my way with disdain. My heart tightens, a familiar ache. I clutch my champagne flute, the cold glass a small comfort against my trembling fingers. I just want this night to end, to melt away into the anonymity of my quiet life. Then, the murmur in the room shifts, a sudden, almost palpable silence descending. A presence. My gaze is drawn to the grand entrance, where he stands. The room holds its breath. He moves, a predator in a tailored suit, his eyes scanning the crowd. Then, slowly, deliberately, they lock onto mine. A shiver, cold and sharp, traces its way down my spine. The grand ballroom of the isolated mansion feels like a gilded cage tonight, every polished surface reflecting the cold, indifferent glow of the chandeliers. I'm an anomaly here, a misplaced piece in a meticulously arranged puzzle, acutely aware of the stark contrast between my simple, elegant dress and the dazzling, almost aggressive displays of wealth around me. Each laugh seems to carry a hidden meaning, every glance a judgment, and the air itself feels thick with unspoken alliances and veiled threats. My presence is tolerated, barely, a courtesy extended to a distant acquaintance of a minor associate, and I can feel the weight of that precarious position pressing down on me, making every breath a conscious effort. The whispers, like tiny, venomous insects, continue to buzz at the periphery of my hearing, confirming my deepest insecurities about belonging, about being seen as anything more than an afterthought in this glittering, dangerous world. My fingers trace the rim of my glass, the condensation a cool relief against my clammy skin, as I try to project an air of calm I'm far from feeling. The music, a smooth, almost imperceptible jazz, does little to soothe the frantic beat of my heart, which thrums a relentless rhythm against my ribs. I watch the other guests, their faces a mask of practiced smiles and calculating eyes. Each interaction a carefully choreographed dance of power and influence. They move with a predatory grace, their movements precise, their conversations laced with an undercurrent of something sharp and unforgiving. I feel utterly transparent, as if they can see right through my carefully constructed facade of indifference, exposing the raw vulnerability that I desperately try to conceal beneath layers of quiet observation and forced composure. The mansion itself is a testament to a certain kind of power, sprawling and modern, yet with an undeniable aura of secrecy. Its floor-to-ceiling windows offer a breathtaking view of the city, but they also feel like a barrier, separating this world from the one I inhabit, a world where consequences are immediate and often brutal. Security personnel, discreetly positioned in dark suits, blend seamlessly into the background, their watchful eyes missing nothing, adding another layer of tension to an already charged atmosphere. Every shadow seems to hold a secret, every closed door a potential conspiracy, and I find myself constantly scanning the room, not for familiar faces, but for any sign of impending trouble, a habit born from an instinct for self-preservation in unfamiliar and unsettling environments. I recall the casual invitation, extended almost as an afterthought, and my own foolish decision to accept, driven by a naive curiosity and a desperate hope for a momentary escape from the mundane. Now, standing amidst these titans of industry and shadowy figures, I regret that impulse with a burning intensity. The air is thick with the scent of expensive perfume and something else, something metallic and cold, like the faint tang of danger. My throat feels tight, a knot of anxiety making it difficult to swallow, and I wish I could simply vanish, to become invisible to the discerning, often cruel eyes that occasionally drift my way, lingering just long enough to make me feel utterly exposed and judged. A group of men in impeccably tailored suits, their expressions serious and their gestures contained, pass by, their low voices a rumble of authority. They exude an almost palpable sense of control, their presence commanding immediate respect and a wide berth from the other guests. Their expensive watches gleam under the soft lighting, symbols of a world I can only observe from a distance, a world where every accessory, every word, every subtle movement is imbued with significance. I try to make myself smaller, to recede further into the periphery, hoping that my insignificance will act as a shield, protecting me from the intense scrutiny that seems to permeate every corner of this lavish, yet unsettling gathering. The whispers, though not directed at me, still sting, their casual cruelty a reminder of my perceived lack of value in this high-stakes environment. "She's just there," one woman had murmured, her voice dripping with condescension, her companion nodding in agreement, a dismissive flick of her wrist sealing my fate in their eyes. It's a familiar narrative, one I've heard in various forms throughout my life, a quiet judgment that has always left me feeling on the outside, looking in. The sting isn't just from their words, but from the echo of my own deepest fears, the fear of being perpetually overlooked, of being deemed unworthy of attention or affection, especially in a place where attention is currency. The low lighting, a deliberate choice to create an ambiance of sophisticated mystery, only serves to heighten my sense of unease. Shadows stretch and dance, distorting familiar shapes, turning innocuous objects into potential threats. The modern, cold aesthetic of the mansion, with its stark lines and minimalist decor, feels less like a home and more like a fortress, designed to keep certain things in and certain things out. I feel the contrast acutely, my own warmth and vulnerability clashing with the icy detachment of my surroundings, making me feel even more exposed and out of place, a fragile bloom in a garden of steel and ice. My gaze drifts back to the entrance where he had appeared, a sudden magnetic force that had momentarily silenced the entire room. He is still there, a focal point, drawing all eyes, even those pretending not to look. His presence is a physical weight in the room, an undeniable power that radiates from him, making the air crackle with an almost electric tension. He hasn't moved much, just a subtle shift of his weight, a slow turn of his head, yet every gesture is imbued with a quiet authority that demands attention. It's the kind of power that doesn't need to be announced, it simply is, and everyone in this room, myself included, feels its undeniable pull, a silent acknowledgement of his absolute dominion. A waiter glides past, offering another glass of champagne, but I shake my head, my throat too constricted to entertain the thought of more liquid. My focus is entirely on him now, a strange, unsettling fascination taking hold. He is the embodiment of everything I've heard whispered about, the kind of man who moves through the world with an invisible shield of untouchable influence. His eyes, when they had met mine, held a depth that was both terrifying and strangely captivating, a silent promise of something profound and potentially dangerous. It was a gaze that didn't just see me, but seemed to assess me, to weigh my worth in a currency I didn't understand, leaving me feeling both exposed and strangely seen for the very first time. The thought of escaping this place, of simply walking out the door and returning to the quiet anonymity of my apartment, flickers briefly, a tempting mirage, but a strange, almost morbid curiosity holds me captive, an invisible tether pulling me deeper into the unfolding drama. I know I should leave, that every instinct for self-preservation screams at me to flee, but something in his gaze, in the way he had looked at me, has paralyzed me, rooting me to this spot. It's a dangerous game, this silent observation, a dance with a fire I know I shouldn't approach, yet I find myself unable to break free from its mesmerizing, destructive allure. The subtle shift in the room's energy is undeniable. Conversations have become even more hushed, glances more furtive, all directed towards him. It's as if a collective breath is being held, waiting for his next move, for the ripple effect of his presence to fully manifest. The usual bravado and casual arrogance of the other guests have been replaced by a cautious deference, a silent acknowledgement of the hierarchy he represents. I feel a strange mix of fear and a perverse sense of anticipation, knowing that whatever happens next will irrevocably alter the delicate balance of this evening, and perhaps the trajectory of my own quiet, unremarkable life. My hands are still trembling, a subtle tremor that I try to hide by pressing them against the cool fabric of my dress. The cold climate of the mansion, maintained at a precise, almost clinical temperature, seems to seep into my bones, amplifying the chill of apprehension that has settled deep within me. I feel like a character in a play, suddenly thrust onto a stage I never auditioned for, the spotlight unexpectedly swinging my way. The contrast between the mundane reality of my everyday existence and the sudden dramatic turn of events is jarring, almost surreal, making me question if this is truly happening, or if I'm merely caught in a vivid, unsettling dream from which I desperately need to awaken. He begins to move, a slow, deliberate progression across the vast room, his path clearing effortlessly as guests subtly part to make way for him. There's no hurriedness in his stride, no overt display of power, just a quiet, unyielding momentum that speaks volumes. Each step is measured, confident, a silent declaration of his undisputed authority. My breath catches in my throat, a sudden sharp intake of air as I realize his trajectory is not random, not merely a circuit of the room. He is moving directly towards my corner, towards the panoramic window, towards me, and a cold dread begins to coil in the pit of my stomach, tightening its grip with each passing second. The whispers have died down completely now, replaced by a suffocating silence, broken only by the faint strains of the jazz music and the distant clinking of ice. All eyes are on him, and by extension, on me, the unwitting recipient of his focused attention. I can feel the collective gaze of the room, 1,000 invisible needles pricking at my skin, making me acutely aware of every flaw, every imperfection. My mind races, desperately searching for an explanation, a reason for this sudden, terrifying focus, but comes up empty. I am just me, an ordinary woman, and he is him, a force of nature, and our paths should never, ever have intersected in such a dramatic, public fashion. He is closer now, close enough for me to discern the sharp cut of his jawline, the subtle tension in his shoulders, the unwavering intensity of his gaze. The air around him feels charged, almost electric, and I can practically taste the danger that emanates from him. A dark, alluring perfume. My heart pounds a frantic drumbeat against my ribs, a desperate attempt to escape the confines of my chest. I want to run, to hide, to disappear into the very fabric of the mansion. But my feet are rooted to the spot, heavy and unresponsive, as if encased in concrete. I am a deer caught in the headlights, utterly mesmerized and terrified by the approaching, inevitable impact. His eyes, dark and fathomless, finally meet mine again. And this time, there's no mistaking the directness of his intent. It's a gaze that strips away all pretense, all my carefully constructed defenses, leaving me feeling utterly exposed and vulnerable. A strange, almost primal fear grips me, a cold certainty that my life, as I know it, is about to change irrevocably. The whispers of "no one wants her" echo in my mind, a cruel counterpoint to the undeniable, terrifying attention now fixed solely upon me. The silence in the room is deafening, pregnant with anticipation as he finally stops, standing directly in front of me, his presence overwhelming, his shadow falling over me like a shroud. His presence is a physical weight, pressing down on me, stealing the air from my lungs. He stands so close I can feel the subtle warmth radiating from his body, the faint scent of expensive cologne and something else, something sharp and dangerous, that clings to him like a second skin. The silence stretches, taut and unbearable, punctuated only by the frantic hammering of my own heart. I can feel the collective gaze of the room, 1,000 eyes burning into my back, dissecting every detail of this unexpected encounter. My mind is a whirlwind of panic and confusion, desperately trying to comprehend why he, of all people, would single me out in such a public and dramatic fashion, shattering the fragile anonymity I had so carefully cultivated. My gaze is trapped by his, unable to break free from the magnetic pull of his dark eyes. There's an intensity there that speaks of unwavering resolve, of a will that bends for no one. I search his face for any hint of emotion, any clue to his intentions, But it's a mask of controlled power, revealing nothing but a quiet, almost predatory confidence. His lips are set in a firm line, his jaw subtly clenched, giving him an aura of unyielding determination. I feel like a small, insignificant creature caught in the gaze of a powerful predator, utterly at his mercy, my fate hanging precariously in the balance of his unspoken command. The contrast between his formidable presence and my own trembling vulnerability is stark, almost comical, if the situation weren't so terrifyingly real. I can feel the heat rising in my cheeks, a blush of mortification and fear, as I imagine the thoughts racing through the minds of the other guests. They must be wondering, speculating, judging, their silent questions echoing the ones screaming inside my own head. What does he want? Why me? What dark game is he playing? And why have I, an ordinary woman, been chosen as an unwilling participant in his dangerous machinations? The weight of their scrutiny is almost as suffocating as his proximity. He finally speaks, his voice a low rumble that seems to vibrate through the very floorboards, cutting through the oppressive silence with an unexpected softness that is almost more unsettling than a harsh command. "You look lost," he says. His words not a question but a statement, a quiet observation that somehow manages to strip away another layer of my composure. His eyes never leave mine, holding me captive, and I find myself unable to formulate a coherent response, my tongue suddenly thick and useless in my mouth. The irony of his words isn't lost on me. I am lost, utterly and completely, adrift in a sea of his making, with no compass to guide me. A flicker of something unreadable crosses his face, a fleeting shadow that disappears as quickly as it came, leaving me even more bewildered. He extends a hand, not in a gesture of greeting, but as if offering a silent invitation, a command disguised as a choice. His fingers are long and strong, his palm calloused, a stark contrast to the smooth, manicured hands of the other men in the room. It's a hand that speaks of action, of power wielded, of decisions made with unwavering conviction. My gaze drops to it, then back to his eyes, a silent battle raging within me between the instinct to recoil and a strange, almost hypnotic urge to comply, to see where this terrifying path might lead. The whispers, though momentarily silenced by his arrival, now seem to resume, albeit in a much lower, more frantic key. I can almost feel their collective shock, their disbelief, their sudden, intense curiosity. The narrative of "no one wants her" has been abruptly shattered, replaced by a new, far more dangerous one. Why does he want her? The shift in perception is palpable, a sudden, uncomfortable spotlight now shining directly on me, illuminating every insecurity, every vulnerability. I am no longer invisible. I am a spectacle, an object of intense scrutiny, and the weight of that newfound attention is almost unbearable, a heavy cloak of dread. My heart is a frantic bird trapped in my chest, beating a desperate rhythm against my ribs, each thump echoing the rising tide of panic within me. I can feel the subtle tremor in my own hand, still clutching the champagne flute, and I know that if I don't steady myself, I might drop it, shattering the fragile illusion of composure I'm desperately trying to maintain. The air around us feels thick, charged with an unspoken tension, as if the entire room is holding its breath, waiting for my response, for the next move in this dangerous, unexpected game. Every second stretches into an eternity, amplifying the pressure, the fear, the overwhelming sense of being utterly out of my depth. He takes a small step closer, a subtle movement that feels like a seismic shift in the confined space between us. His gaze intensifies, a silent challenge, a question that demands an answer without uttering a single word. It's a test, I realize, a subtle probe into my resolve, my courage, my willingness to step into the unknown. The moral dilemma is immediate and stark. Do I resist, risking his displeasure and the unknown consequences that might follow? Or do I comply, surrendering to his will and stepping into a world I know nothing about? A world fraught with unseen dangers and unimaginable stakes? The choice feels monumental, life-altering, and I am utterly unprepared to make it. The opulent surroundings, which moments ago felt like a cage, now seem to recede, blurring into an indistinct background. All that exists is him, his unwavering gaze, the silent question in his eyes, and the terrifying weight of his presence. The sophisticated drinks, the expensive decor, the hushed conversations, all fade into irrelevance, overshadowed by the raw, undeniable power emanating from this man. I am acutely aware of the contrast between the superficial glamour of the event and the very real, very dangerous undercurrent that he represents. A stark reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and true power often lurks beneath a veneer of polished civility. My mind races, desperately trying to find a way out, a polite refusal, a clever deflection, anything to extricate myself from this impossible situation. But his presence is too commanding, his will too strong, to allow for such easy evasion. It's as if he has already anticipated every possible escape route, every potential objection, and has subtly closed them off, leaving me with no choice but to confront the terrifying reality of his attention. The paranoia that permeates this environment, the constant suspicion of betrayal, now feels directed squarely at me. A silent accusation that I am somehow involved, somehow complicit, simply by being the object of his unexpected focus. A bead of sweat trickles down my spine, a cold, unwelcome sensation that only heightens my discomfort. The low lighting, which once seemed atmospheric, now feels oppressive, casting long, distorted shadows that seem to writhe and twist around us, amplifying the sense of unease. I can feel the subtle tension in my shoulders, the tightness in my jaw, every muscle in my body coiled and ready to either flee or freeze. The silence stretches, growing heavier with each passing second, a palpable entity that seems to press in on me from all sides, demanding a response, demanding a decision that I am utterly incapable of making. He still hasn't moved, his hand still extended, a silent, unwavering invitation. It's a gesture that speaks volumes, a quiet assertion of his authority, his expectation of compliance. There's no aggression in his posture, no overt threat, but the unspoken power behind it is far more potent than any shouted command. It's the power of a man who is accustomed to being obeyed, whose word is law, whose desires are met without question. And I, an ordinary woman, am now caught in the crosshairs of that formidable will, a pawn in a game whose rules I don't understand, and whose stakes I can only begin to imagine. The internal struggle is agonizing, a battle between my rational mind, which screams for caution and retreat, and a strange, almost reckless impulse, a dangerous curiosity that whispers of the unknown. What would happen if I took his hand? What new world would open up? What new dangers would I face? What new version of myself would I become? The thought is both terrifying and strangely alluring, a forbidden fruit that promises both peril and an undeniable, intoxicating thrill. It's a moral dilemma that cuts to the very core of my being, forcing me to confront my own boundaries, my own capacity for risk, my own definition of self. My gaze flickers to the faces of the other guests, their expressions a mixture of shock, envy, and a thinly veiled fear. They are watching, waiting, their collective judgment a palpable force. I can almost hear their thoughts, their silent pronouncements of my sudden elevation, or perhaps my inevitable downfall. The contrast between my former invisibility and this sudden, intense spotlight is disorienting, making me feel as if I'm walking a tightrope over a chasm, with no net below. The weight of their expectations, their assumptions, their silent condemnations, is almost as heavy as the boss's unwavering gaze, trapping me in this terrifying public tableau. He finally breaks the silence again, his voice still low, but with an edge of impatience now, a subtle shift in tone that signals the end of my grace period. "Well?" he prompts, the single word a gentle push, a subtle command that brooks no further delay. It's not a question, but a demand, a quiet assertion of his expectation. My heart leaps into my throat, a sudden sharp surge of adrenaline coursing through my veins. The moment of decision is upon me, unavoidable, irreversible. I can feel the eyes of the entire room on me, waiting, watching, their collective breath held in anticipation of my response to this powerful, enigmatic man. My hand, still clutching the champagne flute, slowly, almost imperceptibly, begins to rise. It's a movement born not of conscious choice, but of an almost instinctual surrender, a recognition of the futility of resistance. The glass clinks softly against the ice, a tiny sound that seems to echo in the vast, silent room, a final, fragile protest before I relinquish my last vestiges of control. My fingers, still trembling, reach out, drawn by an invisible force, towards his extended hand, towards the unknown, towards the inevitable. My fate now irrevocably intertwined with his, a terrifying, exhilarating plunge into a world I never imagined. The moment my fingers brush against his, a jolt, sharp and unexpected, courses through me, an electric current that seems to ignite every nerve ending. His grip is firm, warm, and utterly possessive, a silent declaration of ownership that sends a shiver down my spine, a strange mix of fear and an unsettling, almost forbidden thrill. The champagne flute, forgotten in my suddenly numb fingers, slips from my grasp, falling with a soft, muffled thud onto the plush carpet, the sound swallowed by the suffocating silence that has descended upon the room. All eyes are on us, 1,000 silent witnesses to this unspoken transaction, this public claiming, and I feel utterly exposed, my vulnerability laid bare for all to see. He doesn't pull me, doesn't tug, but his grip guides me, a subtle, irresistible force that draws me closer, until I am standing directly in front of him, our bodies almost touching. The air between us crackles with an unspoken tension, a dangerous energy that feels both terrifying and undeniably potent. I can feel the warmth of his breath on my face, the subtle scent of his cologne, and my senses are overwhelmed, every detail amplified by the sheer intensity of the moment. My heart pounds a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a desperate drumbeat against the silence, as I realize the full, terrifying implications of this public display, this undeniable connection that he has forged between us. His gaze, still locked with mine, holds a new intensity now, a depth that seems to pierce through my very soul, stripping away all pretense, all my carefully constructed defenses. There's a silent question in his eyes, a challenge, a promise, and a subtle hint of something possessive, something that claims me without uttering a single word. I feel a strange mix of fear and a perverse sense of fascination, drawn into the dark, magnetic pull of his presence, utterly captivated by the dangerous allure he exudes. The world outside us seems to fade, blurring into an indistinct background, leaving only him and me, suspended in this charged, terrifying moment, the focal point of all attention. A low murmur, like the rustling of dry leaves, begins to spread through the room, a collective gasp of shock and disbelief. The carefully maintained composure of the other guests begins to crack, their masks slipping, revealing expressions of stunned surprise, thinly veiled envy, and outright fear. I can feel the weight of their judgment, their speculation, their sudden, intense curiosity pressing down on me, a heavy cloak of unwanted attention. The narrative of "no one wants her" has been irrevocably shattered, replaced by a new, far more dangerous one. He wants her. And the implications of that shift are both terrifying and undeniably profound, changing everything in an instant. He lifts his free hand, his fingers gently cupping my jaw, his touch surprisingly soft, yet imbued with an undeniable authority. My breath catches in my throat, a sudden sharp intake of air as a wave of heat washes over me, a strange mix of fear and an unsettling, almost forbidden warmth. His thumb traces the line of my cheekbone, a feather-light touch that sends shivers down my spine, a silent caress that feels both tender and utterly possessive. I am frozen, unable to move, unable to speak, utterly at his mercy, my entire being consumed by the overwhelming intensity of his presence, his touch, his unwavering gaze, which promises both protection and an undeniable, terrifying captivity. The silence in the room is deafening, a palpable entity that seems to press in on me from all sides, amplifying the frantic beat of my heart. Every eye is fixed on us, every breath held, every thought focused on this unexpected dramatic tableau. I can feel the collective anticipation, the unspoken questions hanging heavy in the air, waiting for his next move, for the culmination of this shocking display. It's a moment suspended in time, a fragile bubble of tension and unspoken desires, and I am at its very center, an unwilling participant in a drama I never asked to be a part of. My fate now irrevocably tied to the whims of this powerful, enigmatic man. He leans in, his head tilting slightly, his dark eyes still locked with mine. A silent warning, a promise, a challenge. My heart pounds a frantic drumbeat against my ribs, a desperate attempt to escape the confines of my chest, as a wave of dizzying anticipation washes over me. I can feel the subtle warmth of his breath on my lips, the faint scent of his cologne, and my mind races, desperately trying to comprehend what is happening, what he is about to do. The world seems to tilt on its axis, blurring into an indistinct background, leaving only his face, his eyes, his overwhelming presence, filling my entire field of vision, consuming my every thought. Then, his lips meet mine. It's not a gentle kiss, not a tender caress, but a firm, possessive claim, a silent declaration of ownership that sends a shockwave through my entire being. There's no tenderness, no romance, just a raw, undeniable power, a forceful assertion of his will that leaves me breathless and disoriented. My eyes flutter shut, a desperate attempt to escape the overwhelming intensity of the moment, the sheer audacity of his public display. The world spins, a kaleidoscope of sensations, as his lips press harder, a silent command that demands my surrender, my complete and utter submission to his undeniable, terrifying authority. The kiss is brief, yet it feels like an eternity, a lifetime compressed into a single electrifying moment. When he finally pulls back, his eyes still locked with mine, I feel a strange mix of shock, confusion, and a perverse, unsettling sense of exhilaration. My lips tingle, a phantom sensation of his touch, and my entire body feels alight, humming with a strange, dangerous energy. The silence in the room is shattered by a collective gasp, a sudden, sharp intake of breath from the stunned onlookers, their shock a palpable force that reverberates through the opulent ballroom, confirming the monumental impact of his audacious act. He releases my jaw, his hand dropping to my waist, his fingers splaying possessively against the small of my back, a silent claim that binds me to him, irrevocably. His gaze sweeps across the room, a silent challenge to anyone who might dare to question his actions. His eyes burning with an unspoken warning that silences any lingering murmurs of dissent. The other guests, their faces a mixture of fear and awe, avert their eyes, their previous expressions of judgment and disdain replaced by a cautious deference, a silent acknowledgement of his absolute power, his undisputed dominion over this space, and now, over me. My mind is a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, a chaotic storm of fear, confusion, and a strange, almost intoxicating sense of power. The whispers of "no one wants her" have been utterly obliterated, replaced by a new, terrifying reality. He wants her. And that knowledge is both a shield and a cage. I am no longer invisible, no longer overlooked. I am seen, claimed, marked, and the implications of that sudden shift are both profound and terrifying. My life, as I knew it, has been irrevocably altered, shattered into a million pieces by a single, audacious kiss, a public declaration that has bound me to a world I never imagined. His grip on my waist tightens almost imperceptibly, a subtle reminder of his presence, his claim, his unwavering control. He turns slightly, his body shielding me from the direct gaze of the room, a protective gesture that feels both comforting and utterly suffocating. I am a trophy, a possession, a silent declaration of his power, and the weight of that realization presses down on me, a heavy cloak of dread. The moral dilemma is immediate and stark. Am I now safe, protected by his formidable presence, or am I merely a prisoner, bound to a dangerous man in a world of unseen threats? My freedom irrevocably lost in the wake of his audacious act. The air in the room is thick with unspoken questions, with simmering resentment, with a palpable sense of unease. The other guests, though silenced by his presence, are undoubtedly dissecting every detail, speculating about the meaning of this dramatic display, their minds racing with theories and conjectures. I can feel their eyes still on us, even though they pretend not to look, their curiosity a burning ember in the charged atmosphere. The contrast between the superficial glamour of the event and the raw, undeniable power play that has just unfolded is jarring, a stark reminder that beneath the polished veneer of civility, a dangerous game is always being played. He leans down, his lips brushing my ear, his voice a low, intimate whisper that sends another shiver down my spine. "You're mine now," he murmurs, his words a soft, possessive declaration that seals my fate, leaving no room for doubt, no possibility of escape. It's not a question, not a request, but a statement of absolute ownership, a quiet assertion of his undeniable claim. My breath hitches in my throat, a sudden, sharp intake of air as the full weight of his words settles upon me, a heavy, suffocating realization that my life, my choices, my very being are no longer my own, but irrevocably bound to his will. The world outside us, the opulent ballroom, the stunned guests, the city lights below, all fade into an indistinct blur, leaving only his voice, his touch, his overwhelming presence. I am caught in a vortex of his making, a dangerous, exhilarating current that pulls me deeper into his world, a world of power, of secrets, of unseen threats. The moral dilemmas multiply, each one more complex, more terrifying than the last. How do I navigate this new reality? How do I survive in a world where loyalty is currency, betrayal is a constant threat, and my very existence is now tied to the whims of a man who has claimed me with a single, audacious kiss? My heart continues its frantic beat, a desperate drum against the confines of my chest. But now, mixed with the fear, there's a strange, unsettling sense of inevitability, a quiet acceptance of my new, terrifying reality. The whispers of "no one wants her" are gone, replaced by the undeniable, terrifying truth of his claim. I am no longer an outsider, no longer invisible. I am now irrevocably part of his world, a world of shadows and power, and the journey ahead is fraught with unknown dangers, uncertain alliances, and moral choices that will test the very limits of my being. The kiss was not an end, but a beginning, a dramatic, terrifying prelude to a life I never imagined. The aftermath of the kiss hangs heavy in the air, a palpable tension that permeates every corner of the opulent ballroom. The other guests, once a vibrant tapestry of conversation and laughter, now stand in hushed, scattered groups, their gazes furtive, their expressions a mixture of shock, fear, and a thinly veiled curiosity that still burns beneath their forced indifference. He still stands beside me, his hand a warm, possessive weight on my waist, a constant reminder of his claim, his presence a silent, unyielding shield that simultaneously protects and imprisons me. The music, once a soothing backdrop, now feels discordant, a jarring counterpoint to the dramatic silence that has fallen over the room, amplifying my sense of unease. He doesn't speak, doesn't offer an explanation, and I realize with a chilling clarity that none is needed. His actions were the explanation, a public declaration that brooks no argument, no dissent. The power he wields is absolute, a silent force that commands obedience without uttering a single word. I feel like a puppet, my strings now firmly in his grasp, my movements dictated by his unspoken will. The initial shock begins to give way to a cold, creeping dread, a terrifying realization that my life, my autonomy, my very identity, have been irrevocably altered by a single, audacious act, a public claiming that has bound me to a world I know nothing about. The moral dilemmas multiply, each one more complex and terrifying than the last. Am I now safe, protected by his formidable presence, or am I merely a prisoner, bound to a dangerous man in a world of unseen threats? The line between protection and captivity blurs, becoming indistinguishable, and I find myself adrift in a sea of uncertainty, with no compass to guide me. The loyalty that is so highly valued in this world, as described in the visual guide, now feels like a double-edged sword, a promise of security that comes at the cost of my freedom, my independence, my very soul. The paranoia and suspicion of betrayal, also mentioned, now feel directed inward, a constant fear of my own complicity. He finally turns, his gaze sweeping over the room one last time, a silent dismissal that sends a ripple of movement through the scattered groups of guests. They begin to disperse, their departures hurried, their faces carefully blank, avoiding eye contact, as if afraid to acknowledge the dramatic spectacle they have just witnessed. The illusion of a high society event shatters, revealing the raw, dangerous undercurrents that truly govern this world. I feel a strange sense of relief as the room slowly empties, but it's a fleeting sensation, quickly replaced by the chilling realization that I am now alone with him, the architect of my new, terrifying reality. His grip on my waist remains firm as he begins to move, guiding me towards a discreet exit at the back of the ballroom, away from the main entrance. His steps are measured, confident, his posture radiating an unyielding authority that brooks no argument. I follow, my legs feeling heavy, unresponsive, as if encased in concrete, my mind still reeling from the events that have just unfolded. The contrast between the opulent setting and the sudden, almost clandestine nature of our departure is jarring. A stark reminder that in this world, appearances are often deceiving, and true power operates in the shadows, away from the prying eyes of the public. We pass by a group of his security personnel, their expressions serious, their eyes attentive, their presence a silent, formidable barrier. They nod subtly to him, a gesture of deference and unwavering loyalty, their gazes briefly flicking to me, assessing, evaluating, before returning to their watchful posts. Their silent presence, almost always in dark suits, as noted in the character guide, generates a constant tension, a palpable sense of unseen threats and ever-present danger. I realize that I am now under their protection, but also under their constant surveillance, my every move observed, every action scrutinized, my freedom irrevocably curtailed by the very forces meant to keep me safe. The cold climate of the mansion, which once felt oppressive, now seems to mirror the icy dread that has settled deep within me. The modern, stark aesthetic of the corridors we pass through feels less like a home and more like a labyrinth, a maze of polished surfaces and shadowed corners, each turn leading me deeper into an unknown, dangerous world. The silence between us is deafening, pregnant with unspoken questions, with the weight of his claim, with the terrifying uncertainty of my future. I steal a glance at his profile, searching for answers, for a hint of emotion, but his face remains a mask of controlled power, revealing nothing. We reach a private elevator, its polished doors sliding open silently, revealing a plush, dimly lit interior. He gestures for me to enter, a subtle inclination of his head, and I step inside, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. He follows and the doors slide shut, sealing us within the confined space, cutting us off from the last vestiges of the event, from the last glimpses of my former life. The descent is smooth, almost imperceptible, but it feels like a plummet into an abyss, a terrifying plunge into a world from which there is no return, no escape, no possibility of reclaiming the quiet anonymity I once cherished. The moral ambiguity of my situation is overwhelming. Was his kiss an act of salvation, pulling me from the periphery of neglect and into a world of protection? Or was it an act of ultimate possession, stripping me of my freedom and binding me to a life of danger and uncertainty? The line between savior and captor blurs, becoming indistinguishable, and I find myself grappling with the terrifying realization that in this world, those two roles are often one and the same. The choice, if it ever truly was one, has been made for me, and I am now forced to navigate the treacherous waters of his world, with no map, no compass, and no true understanding of the currents that will inevitably pull me under. The elevator doors open onto a subterranean garage, a vast, dimly lit space filled with sleek, dark vehicles. The air is cool, metallic, carrying the faint scent of exhaust and something else, something industrial and cold, like the abandoned warehouses mentioned in the visual guide. A black SUV, its windows tinted, waits silently, its engine idling, a silent beast ready to transport us into the unknown. The sight of it, so typical of this world, reinforces the chilling reality of my situation, the undeniable fact that I am now part of his domain, a passenger on a journey whose destination is shrouded in mystery and fraught with unseen perils. He opens the passenger door for me, a gesture of unexpected courtesy that feels strangely out of place amidst the raw power he exudes. I hesitate for a moment, my gaze sweeping over the vast, empty garage, a desperate, futile search for an escape route, a way back to the life I once knew. But there is none, only the silent, waiting SUV and the unwavering presence of the man who has claimed me. With a heavy sigh, a quiet surrender, I slide into the plush leather seat, the interior of the vehicle enveloping me in a cocoon of expensive silence, a luxurious prison from which there is no immediate escape. He closes the door with a soft click, a final, definitive sound that seals my fate, severing my last ties to the world I once inhabited. He walks around to the driver's side, his movements fluid, confident, and slips behind the wheel. The engine hums softly, a low, powerful growl that vibrates through the floorboards, a silent promise of speed and an undeniable sense of purpose. I watch his profile, illuminated by the faint glow of the dashboard lights. His face still a mask of controlled power, revealing nothing of his thoughts, his intentions, his plans for me. The ambiguity of his character, the potential for both help and betrayal, as described for the autoridade comprometida, now feels acutely relevant to him. The SUV glides smoothly out of the garage, ascending a winding ramp that leads us out into the night. The city lights, once a distant tapestry, now rush past, a blur of color and motion, as we merge onto a deserted highway. The roads are rural, unlit, surrounded by dark forests, just as described in the visual guide, amplifying my sense of isolation, my feeling of being cut off from civilization, from any hope of rescue. The silence in the car is profound, broken only by the soft hum of the engine and the frantic beat of my own heart, a relentless rhythm against the confines of my chest, a desperate plea for answers that remain elusive. I steal a glance at him, his hands resting lightly on the steering wheel, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. He is a man of few words, his power communicated through gestures, through presence, through an undeniable aura of authority. The culture of silence and tension, of power built by gestures and choices, as outlined in the visual guide, is now my reality. I am a silent passenger in his world, a world where unspoken commands carry more weight than shouted words, where every glance, every subtle movement is imbued with a deeper meaning, a hidden message that I am only just beginning to decipher, a dangerous language I must quickly learn to understand. The journey continues, the SUV eating up the miles, carrying me further and further away from everything I know, everything I once was. The initial shock has begun to wear off, replaced by a dull ache of resignation, a quiet acceptance of my new, terrifying reality. I am no longer just an ordinary woman. I am now irrevocably linked to him, to his world, to the dangers and uncertainties that come with his claim. The ambiguous outcome of this falling action is clear. I am no longer free, but whether I am protected or merely a more valuable prisoner remains to be seen. A terrifying question mark hanging over my uncertain future. My gaze drifts out the window, watching the dark, endless expanse of the forest rush by, a silent, unforgiving landscape that mirrors the vast, terrifying unknown that now stretches before me. The whispers of "no one wants her" are a distant echo, replaced by the undeniable, terrifying truth of his claim, a truth that has irrevocably altered the trajectory of my life. The kiss was not an end, but a dramatic, terrifying prelude to a new chapter, a dangerous journey into a world of shadows, power, and moral dilemmas that will test the very limits of my being. A world from which there is no turning back, no escape, only the terrifying, exhilarating plunge into the unknown. The SUV finally slows, turning off the main road onto a long, winding private drive, shrouded by ancient, towering trees that seem to swallow the meager light of the moon. The journey has been a blur of silent miles, my mind a chaotic storm of fear, confusion, and a strange, unsettling sense of inevitability. I've watched the landscape transform from the urban sprawl of the city to the desolate rural roads, each mile taking me further away from everything familiar, everything safe. The silence in the car has been oppressive, broken only by the soft hum of the engine and the frantic beat of my own heart, a relentless rhythm against the confines of my chest, a desperate plea for answers that remain elusive, trapped behind his unreadable facade. As we approach, a massive modern mansion emerges from the darkness, its sleek lines and minimalist design illuminated by strategically placed, low-intensity lights. It's the kind of isolated, imposing structure I'd seen in the visual guide, a fortress disguised as a home, designed for privacy and protection, but also for control. Security cameras, almost invisible against the dark facade, seem to track our every movement, their silent gaze a constant reminder of the pervasive surveillance that defines this world. My stomach clenches, a cold knot of dread tightening with each foot we travel closer, the realization hitting me that this is not a temporary stop, but likely my new, terrifying reality, a gilded cage from which escape seems impossible. The SUV pulls up to the main entrance, a massive, dark wood door that seems to absorb all light. Two men in dark suits, their faces impassive, emerge from the shadows, opening our doors with practiced efficiency. Their eyes, though discreet, sweep over me with an almost clinical assessment, a silent acknowledgement of my new status, my new connection to their boss. I can feel their scrutiny, their unspoken questions, their subtle judgment, and it adds another layer of discomfort to an already overwhelming situation. Their presence is a stark reminder of the constant vigilance, the ever-present threat, the unwavering loyalty that defines this dangerous, secretive world, a world I am now irrevocably a part of. He steps out first, his movements fluid and confident, his presence immediately commanding the space. He doesn't wait for me, doesn't offer a hand, simply moves towards the entrance, expecting me to follow. It's a subtle assertion of his authority, a silent command that brooks no argument, no hesitation. I take a deep breath, trying to steady my trembling legs, and step out of the vehicle, the cool night air a sharp contrast to the suffocating warmth of the car. The mansion looms before me, a silent, imposing monolith, its dark windows like unblinking eyes, watching, waiting, ready to swallow me whole into its enigmatic depths, into a life I never chose. Inside, the mansion is a study in minimalist luxury, all stark lines, polished stone, and muted colors. The lighting is low, casting long, dramatic shadows that dance across the walls, creating an ambiance of sophisticated mystery, but also of constant tension, a feeling of being perpetually observed. The air is cool, almost sterile, carrying the faint scent of expensive wood and something else, something metallic and cold, like the faint tang of danger that seems to cling to every surface. It feels less like a home and more like a high-tech command center, a place where power is wielded and decisions are made with ruthless efficiency, far removed from the warmth and chaos of ordinary life. He leads me through a vast, open-plan living area, past expensive abstract art and sleek, uncomfortable furniture, towards a set of imposing double doors at the far end. His pace is unhurried, deliberate, as if he has all the time in the world, as if my presence is merely another item on his meticulously planned agenda. I follow silently, my mind still reeling, my senses overwhelmed by the sheer scale and cold opulence of my new surroundings. Every step I take feels like a step further into an unknown abyss, a terrifying descent into a world where the rules are unwritten, the stakes are impossibly high, and my very survival depends on understanding the unspoken language of power. The doors open into what appears to be a private study, a large room dominated by a massive dark wood desk and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes. A single, powerful lamp casts a pool of light onto the desk, leaving the rest of the room in a soft, inviting shadow. He gestures towards a plush leather armchair opposite the desk, a silent command to sit. I obey, my movements stiff, my body still humming with a nervous energy that refuses to dissipate. The chair is surprisingly comfortable, enveloping me in its soft embrace, but the sense of unease, of being trapped, remains, a constant gnawing presence in the pit of my stomach. He settles into the chair behind the desk, his movements economical, precise, his gaze never leaving mine. The desk, a barrier between us, feels like a symbolic representation of the chasm that separates our worlds, our experiences, our very beings. He leans back, his fingers steepled, his expression unreadable, a mask of controlled power that reveals nothing of his thoughts. The silence stretches again, thick and heavy, punctuated only by the soft hum of the mansion's unseen systems and the frantic beat of my own heart, a desperate drum against the confines of my chest, echoing the profound uncertainty of my future. "You have a choice," he finally says, his voice a low, even tone that betrays no emotion, no hint of the dramatic events that have just unfolded. My breath catches in my throat, a sudden sharp intake of air, as a flicker of hope, fragile and almost painful, ignites within me. A choice? After everything that has happened, after his public claim, his possessive kiss, his undeniable assertion of ownership, he offers me a choice. The words feel like a cruel trick, a twisted game, designed to lull me into a false sense of security before the inevitable hammer falls, crushing any lingering illusions of freedom. "You can leave," he continues, his gaze unwavering. "Return to your life, your anonymity. But know this, once you walk out that door, you are no longer under my protection. The whispers will return, the judgments will intensify, and the world you thought you knew will be far more dangerous than you remember." His words are not a threat, but a cold, calculated statement of fact, a stark reminder of the precarious position I occupied before he intervened, before he claimed me in front of everyone, shattering the fragile illusion of my quiet, unremarkable existence. The moral dilemma is immediate and stark. Freedom, but at what cost? Or, he pauses, his eyes narrowing almost imperceptibly, you can stay, become part of this, learn its rules, understand its demands, and in return, you will have a level of security, of influence, of belonging that you never imagined possible. The second option, delivered with the same dispassionate tone, is equally terrifying, equally alluring. It's a Faustian bargain, a trade of my autonomy for protection, my innocence for power, my quiet life for a world of unseen dangers and unimaginable stakes. The choice feels monumental, life-altering, and I am utterly unprepared to make it, my mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, of fear and a strange, almost reckless curiosity. My gaze drifts around the opulent study, taking in the expensive books, the subtle security features, the undeniable aura of power that permeates every corner of the room. This is his world, a world built on loyalty, on silence, on an unwavering commitment to a code I don't yet understand. The paranoia and suspicion of betrayal, mentioned in the visual guide, now feel like a constant gnawing presence, a silent warning that even within this promised security, danger lurks, waiting for a moment of weakness, a lapse in judgment, a misplaced trust. The choice he offers is not between good and evil, but between two different forms of captivity, two different paths fraught with peril. Think carefully, he advises, his voice still even, but with an underlying current of something unyielding, something that suggests his patience is not limitless. This is not a game. There is no turning back once your decision is made. His words echo the chilling reality of my situation, the irreversible nature of the path I am about to choose, the weight of his gaze, the oppressive silence, the sheer magnitude of the decision pressing down on me, make my head spin. I am a pawn in a game whose rules I am only just beginning to comprehend, and my next move will determine the entire trajectory of my future, for better or for worse. I close my eyes, trying to clear my mind, to find a moment of clarity amidst the chaos. I think of the whispers, the cruel judgments, the feeling of being perpetually overlooked, of being deemed unworthy of attention or affection. I think of the quiet anonymity of my former life, a life that now seems impossibly distant, impossibly small. And then I think of his kiss, his public claim, the sudden terrifying spotlight that has been thrust upon me, irrevocably altering my existence. The choice is not just about my future, but about my past, about the woman I was, and the woman I am about to become, forged in the crucible of his dangerous world. When I open my eyes, his gaze is still fixed on me, unwavering, patient, yet undeniably expectant. There's no pressure in his expression, no overt manipulation, just a quiet assertion of his will, his expectation that I will choose wisely, choose in a way that aligns with his unspoken agenda. The moral dilemma is agonizing, a battle between the instinct for self-preservation and a strange, almost reckless impulse to embrace the unknown, to step into the fire and see if I can emerge, not unscathed, but transformed, stronger, more resilient, a woman who is no longer defined by the whispers of others. My gaze drifts to his hand, resting lightly on the desk, his fingers long and strong, capable of both tenderness and immense power. It's the hand that claimed me, the hand that offered me a choice, the hand that now holds the key to my future. The contrast between the raw power he exudes and the subtle, almost gentle way he presents this life-altering decision is unsettling, a testament to the complex, ambiguous nature of his character. A man who can be both protector and captor, savior and tormentor, all at once, in a single, terrifyingly compelling package. I'll stay, I hear myself say, the words a soft, almost inaudible whisper that seems to echo in the vast, silent room. The decision, once made, feels both terrifying and strangely liberating, a surrender to the inevitable, a plunge into the unknown. A flicker of something unreadable crosses his face, a fleeting shadow that disappears as quickly as it came, leaving me even more bewildered, even more uncertain of his true intentions, his ultimate plans for me. But the choice is made, the die is cast, and there is no turning back, no possibility of reclaiming the quiet anonymity I once cherished. He nods slowly, a subtle acknowledgement of my decision, his expression still unreadable, his eyes still holding that deep, fathomless intensity. Good, he says, the single word a quiet affirmation that seals my fate, binding me irrevocably to his world, to his will, to the dangers and uncertainties that come with his claim. The silence that follows is different now, no longer oppressive, but pregnant with a new kind of tension, a sense of anticipation, of a journey just beginning, a terrifying, exhilarating plunge into a life I never imagined, a life where every choice will have profound consequences. The room, once a symbol of his power, now feels like a crucible, a place where I will be tested, forged, transformed. The low lighting, the modern aesthetic, the pervasive sense of surveillance, all now seem less threatening and more like the inherent conditions of my new existence. I am no longer just an ordinary woman. I am now irrevocably linked to him, to his world, to the dangers and uncertainties that come with his claim. The ambiguous resolution of this chapter is clear. I have chosen a path, but whether it leads to salvation or ultimate destruction remains to be seen. A terrifying question mark hanging over my uncertain future. My heart, which had been pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs, now settles into a steady, almost defiant beat. The fear is still there, a cold, persistent presence, but it is now tempered by a strange, almost reckless sense of resolve, a quiet determination to survive, to understand, to navigate the treacherous waters of his world. I will learn its rules, I will understand its demands, and I will find my place within its complex, dangerous hierarchy, not as a victim, but as a participant, a player in a game whose stakes are impossibly high, but whose rewards, if I can survive, might be equally profound. He rises from his desk, his movements fluid and powerful, and walks around to my side of the desk. He extends his hand again, not in a gesture of command, but of invitation, a silent acknowledgement of my choice, my willingness to step into his world. This time there's no hesitation, no internal struggle. I reach out, my fingers firm, and take his hand, my grip steady, a silent declaration of my acceptance, my commitment to the path I have chosen, for better or for worse. The contact is still electric, still potent, but now, mixed with the fear, there's a strange, almost intoxicating sense of purpose, a quiet resolve that I will not just survive, but thrive. "Welcome," he says, his voice a low rumble, his eyes holding a flicker of something that might be approval, or perhaps a subtle hint of a challenge. It's a simple word, but it carries the weight of 1,000 unspoken promises, 1,000 unseen dangers, 1,000 new beginnings. The world outside the mansion, the world of ordinary life, now feels impossibly distant, a fading memory. I am here, in his world, bound to him, and the journey ahead is fraught with unknown perils, uncertain alliances, and moral choices that will test the very limits of my being. A world from which there is no turning back, no escape, only the terrifying, exhilarating plunge into the unknown. The silence that settles between us now is different, no longer oppressive, but charged with a new kind of energy, a sense of shared purpose, of a dangerous alliance forged in the crucible of a single audacious kiss. I am no longer the woman who was whispered about, the one no one wants. I am now the woman who was claimed, the one who chose, the one who stepped into the fire, ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead. The ambiguous resolution of this chapter is clear. My life has been irrevocably altered, and the true nature of my new reality, whether it is salvation or ultimate captivity, will only be revealed in the unfolding drama of the days to come. My gaze meets his, and for the first time, I feel a strange sense of defiance, a quiet strength that I never knew I possessed. The fear is still present, a constant companion, but it is now overshadowed by a growing sense of resolve, a determination to navigate this treacherous landscape on my own terms, to carve out a space for myself within his formidable world. I am no longer a passive observer. I am a participant, a player in a game whose stakes are impossibly high, but whose rewards, if I can survive, might be equally profound. A new beginning in a world of shadows and power, where my destiny is now inextricably linked to his. The mansion, once an imposing fortress, now feels like a stage, a setting for the unfolding drama of my new life. The low lighting, the modern aesthetic, the pervasive sense of surveillance, all now seem less like threats and more like the inherent conditions of my new existence. I am here in his world, bound to him, and the journey ahead is fraught with unknown perils, uncertain alliances, and moral choices that will test the very limits of my being, a world from which there is no turning back, no escape, only the terrifying, exhilarating plunge into the unknown. A new chapter in a story that has only just begun, its ending shrouded in mystery and suspense. I take another deep breath, the air in the study feeling heavy with unspoken possibilities, with the weight of my decision. My hand, still clasped in his, feels like a lifeline, a connection to a world that is both terrifying and undeniably compelling. The whispers of "no one wants her" are a distant echo, replaced by the undeniable, terrifying truth of his claim, a truth that has irrevocably altered the trajectory of my life. The kiss was not an end, but a dramatic, terrifying prelude to a new chapter, a dangerous journey into a world of shadows, power, and moral dilemmas that will test the very limits of my being. A world from which there is no turning back, no escape, only the terrifying, exhilarating plunge into the unknown.